losing $1,400 trading NVDA and Meta. What's on, guys? Welcome on into the recap. Those cookies are so good. I made some sourdough chocolate chip cookies with maple syrup. Let me tell you. Oh my god. They don't come out as crispy. They come out more like scony and more cakey a bit, but they still slap. I just had one. It's actually my second one this afternoon. Made them for Easter. They're incredible. I need to make them more often, just on a random Tuesday, because why not? So here's dude, honestly, man, I feel honestly as if we are just kind of playing this chop, and we got these waves, and I'll explain what I mean by the waves in a second. So we got two trades to recap. One on Meta, one on NVIDIA. The day could have been really good. The day could have been nice. It could have been a one win, and we're out. Technically speaking, it's going to go down as a Meta win, even though realistically, it's a break-even trade. The NVIDIA is going to go down as a loss, which it should, and that's it. But let's get into this Meta. So I'll go on TradeZella so we can see it a bit better. I think because you'll be able to see my running P&L a bit better. And these are both on the 5-minute time frame, which if you jump in, essentially we had this very nice consolidation here on Meta, and that we broke that low a day, got a push. This, I was at the gym very close to my target, and then it bounced. Now, so you can kind of see, and then I got stopped out break even here. So you can see on the running P&L at one point, I'm covering the end as it fell back to break even, but at one point I was up over $1,500 on the trade, or about $1,500 on the trade, and my target was about $1 lower than where it ended up going. So I thought I'd bring this one up first because it sucks, because like, oh man, we were up nice, and then we went the other way. So if I jump into the chart here, you'll see exactly what I mean on the trade. So essentially we had a little consolidation wedge. I just drew those lines in for fun, but really I just play the breakdown, the horizontal breakdown. So I didn't get in until this candle right in here as we broke low a day. And we got a nice push, and it just didn't quite get to my target of this 479. Now, before the trade, I did think to myself, 480 is going to probably be a psychological spot, and we came to that exact spot. Literally, it bounced at just around 480, like by a couple of cents. So looking back, my original inclination was there. And it would have, had I entered on the breakdown of this wedge, which would have been this candle right here, had I entered even at the bottom of that candle, yes. I mean, if you read, or if I make a new graph here, and I go stop loss above high, and then target, I mean, we would have gotten almost a 2-to-1. So I was targeting 1.5. So I would have gotten what I was targeting, and I probably would have targeted that 180, or that 480, I should say, because it would have lined up pretty close with my 1.5-to-1 anyway, or it would have actually been better than 1.5-to-1. But either way, that's what I could have done, but I don't trade that way normally. I usually play the breakdown of the level, so low of day usually on these breakdowns. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. And as you can see, this is one of those, it's like, eh. But the problem is that we kind of got this move, and it was like, eh. And okay, as we moved down, I was walking into the gym, and I was like, okay, we're up like $1,300, whatever it was. Let's move my stop loss to break even. And then while I was hitting my second or third set of incline bench, we stop out break even, and that was it. Like, okay, cool. So that's what happened on that one. Technically it made $35, and that was it. I only took this trade on the $200,000 account. I'm not trading the other accounts, even though one of them is funded, one of them is close to getting funded. I'm not trading them right now just because they're smaller amounts. I'd rather trade this one, the bigger one. But to be honest, this is not a bad thing, because I've been losing as of late. So yeah, but the trade copier is not working right now. So once the trade copier is working properly, hopefully soon. I keep getting told. I was told end of March, and then I was told soon in early April, and here we are end of April now almost. And so it's still not done, but hopefully it gets done. It gets taken care of soon. We'll see. I assume it will be soon, but we'll see. NVIDIA 1430. Here's where I want to talk about these cycles and these kind of like oscillations that I was thinking about. So it's funny if you compare these guys, we'll go back and forth and I'll do some comparisons. So you had this NVIDIA, this is kind of just a get fucked type of trade. Like I literally enter on this breakdown to low of day right here, which I thought was a really good setup. And this tends to be a really good setup for me. And then it just got like, literally just said, suck my, like, whatever. I was going to say something weird there. Thank God I stopped myself. And then it just said, sorry, we're going back up. And it just literally just didn't. Like, I could tell in this period, I'm like, yeah, this is not going to, I can almost tell this is probably not going to work. But I just left it alone because I thought to myself, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's fine. If it does work, I want to be pissed that I thought that it was, that I was like thinking it wasn't going to work. But it's one of those where it's like, you just leave it. I just left it alone. Like I wasn't going to mess with it and then ended up just losing. I had a sense that after the first, 20 minutes of being in the trade and nothing was happening, I was like, yeah, we're probably going to lose. But the thought process here though, and same with the meta trade, movement to the downside, obviously we're going down, got a consolidation, making that next little push down. It was a little push down, not a big push down. It was a little push down. So playing this breakdown right here, or I didn't play this one. This one I was at the gym, or I missed this one. And then I see a consolidation right in here. I'm like, oh, perfect. Great consolidation at low day. Break that low day. Boom. And it on top of that, you're playing with the volume momentum. You got the higher volume downside push right here. It's telling us we are going, we seemingly want to go lower. Doesn't mean we have to go lower, as you can see, and it's not a perfect situation every time, but that's kind of the look. Get a little breakdown, get the setup, and then it's like, sorry, suck my, and we go back up. And that's kind of what happens. So, but what I mean by this oscillation is that if you go over the S&P, go over the NASDAQ, at a point in time, this was, like, I prefer to play this relatively weak stock versus the S&P or NASDAQ because you tend to get to get bigger moves on the individual stocks. Like the individual stocks will move, a few percent, whereas the S&P or NASDAQ might move 0.5% or 1% to the downside or upside, and you'll get these moves of like 2, 3 to 4% sometimes on these individual stocks, which is great. So like, I love it. And these moves I was looking for were like not even 1% or like around the 1% mark for these types of moves. So I'm like, okay, well, if the S&P goes down 0.25 or 0.5%, we could probably get 1% on NVIDIA or Meta as they're down 3, 4, 5, 6 on the day, like compared to the S&P being down 2 or 3. So, or out 3. So they're like down like double, or NVIDIA was. So that's my thought process was, you get better movement on those guys. And then you can kind of see, we're like on the Meta situation, here's where that trade was being taken place. We're drilling to lows, but Meta wasn't really dropping too fast at the time. So I'm like, the momentum is not really totally there. I know in the back of my head, at some point, you're going to get a bounce on the S&P. And when you do, Meta's going to get, I'm going to get wiped. I'm going to go back to break even, or it's going to bounce right back. And the momentum's gone. So like what I'm looking for is relative weakness. And what I've been finding essentially on these trades is that we have it briefly and then it fades. So you have relative weakness initially, then you enter the trade, then it fades, and you're like watching the S&P compared to your, or the NASDAQ compared to the individual stock. And you're like, the S&P and NASDAQ are kind of just drilling to new lows, but now my stock is just consolidating. It's actually holding up. I'm like, that's not a good sign, because then usually when the S&P or NASDAQ, even if it bounces a tiny bit, even if it goes back to low day later, but it bounces enough, that could bounce you back to your stop loss or bounce you back to break even if you've already moved your stop loss to break even. So that's the issue that I've been having, and that's what I've been noticing over the past couple of weeks now, or this month, I should say, this month. So I guess, yeah, it's been about 3 weeks. Specifically on these individual trades, which like it grinds my gears because we've had such an amazing downside month initially, and then we had a bounce for a bit, and now we're kind of going back down. We've had a great trend. Like we're still in a downtrend. Like we've got these good moves, but capitalizing on the trend for me has not been very easy per the strategy. So if I had a different approach or a different strategy, potentially could have worked better. I don't, and so my strategy right now is just not working great. However, like I always say, there are periods where it won't. There are periods where it will. So you can kind of play this game of trying to pick what strategy to use on which given day, or you can just trade one, keep it super simple, start to get a feel, keep your risk tight, your losses small. So when you're losing, it's going to happen. It's just natural. It's what you're going to go through. you lose. But then when you're winning and when it's working, you are just crushing, and you're boom, boom, boom. You're just like clicking, 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 and it's all rolling, and you're capitalizing. That's my approach. You can say whatever you want to say about it, but that's been my approach. It's worked for the past 2 years. Maybe it won't work this year for all I know. Who knows? But that's the way I like to do things, because I don't like the mental confusion that you create by having to jump between different strategies at different times. There is something to be said for a completely automated approach to this, which is starting to percolate in the back of my head. Not exactly sure how the execution would go, but I have been thinking about it, where I sort of backtest, or I create a strategy that is kind of rarely used. Like, there's some certain criteria that has to be met, and the strategy is rarely used, but when it is used, it's automated. You know what I mean? So there's no having to think. It just does its own thing. And this way I can kind of trade my core strategy just from my own head and trade that, and then have something else in the background, or have maybe a couple in the background, and just see how they would do over time. I'm very curious about that stuff. I also get into that, and I think to myself, with the whole AI and automation age that we're moving into and stuff, I do wonder how that will move, or how the markets will move, because if everyone has their own coded bot, or their own trading strategy that's automated, doesn't the market pick up on that eventually, and will that eventually not work? You know what I mean? So that's where I kind of think that you have to have some part of the component. You have to use your own discretion. That's where it gets interesting. So it's a really, honestly, dude, it's a really fun mind exercise in general to think about all this stuff. That's why I really enjoy it. It's honestly, and I got to a point now where I've put up enough guardrails internally, or just through my own experiences, that it's not a gambling situation. Like, you can say, people will say trading is gambling, and that's what you may be. That's why I never tell anyone that this is what I do. Part-time. Although sometimes it feels like it is a full-time job just when you're thinking about things. But I have over the past couple months and years, it's not nearly consumed my life as much as it maybe had in the past. But it makes you think, and with proper or enough experience, enough guardrails, you can get to a point where you don't have these massive blow up losing days, weeks, or months. And so I'm fine. I will sit inside of drawdown. I am very comfortable in drawdown. Some people are not. And what ends up happening is you get into drawdown, and then it causes you to do different things. I'm pretty comfortable with drawdown and where I'm at on it. And I'm not using funds that I need to pay for my, kids, which I don't have. You know what I mean? So I'm in a situation where I feel pretty comfortable about how I'm doing it, which I think is where you have to be to have the most level-headed approach. So we'll see how it goes, but I'm obviously we're in drawdown for the month. And if we jump back on it, we've essentially been trading with $200,000 at least, on the trades. So being down 8 is being down about 4% this month right now. So I'm down about 4% on the month, which when you broaden it out is not that big of a deal in my head. However, that's still kind of a 4% hole that, of course, this is the month that we size up, and we have now a 4% hole to claw out of, to now just to make it back to, break even. But that's not how I really want to think about things. It's not how I care to think about things, to be honest with you. So that all said, that's the recap. We're losing, but hopefully we can turn that around soon. Thanks so much for watching. I'll leave a link down below to TradeZella, where I track it all. Code TC10 saves you 10%. I was just looking deeper into the backtesting section of TradeZella. Pretty freaking cool. If I'm going to be honest, the backtesting feature is pretty darn cool. I haven't used it, but that is something that you can literally just, if you got nothing to do for a weekend and you're just bored, or you want to, it's raining or whatever, dude, the backtesting side of TradingView, you can just backtest you can craft up your own entire strategy, go back to a specific month, week, or even 2-month period, year-long period, and just backtest trade on super, not super high level, but you can speed the time frames up. You can look at different time frames. It's pretty sick. with that said, thanks so much for watching. I'm going to get another cookie, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.